That's adorable.
Yeah.
This is SPTV.
And we are live. Hey, Jenna.
Hey, Mike.
How are you?
Good. So
Good.
excited to see you after all these years.
I know, right? We haven't had a chance to actually see each other in person. Shoot, when was the last time? It was probably, I think the last time I actually saw you might have been when you were
Right.
walking around. No, you at one point were walking around Gold.
Oh, right. Okay,
You were
yeah.
wearing like CMO uniform and you were barely a teenager.
Right. Yeah. I remember that. I visited back. That was when my mom went on the RPF. So,
Yeah, it's been a long
yeah,
time.
so long.
So
Like
long.
more than 20 years.
Yeah, it's been a long, long time. Well, awesome. It's been a big week out there in California and everything with all of the protesting and getting out there again. Recently,
Mhm.
you've started your channel back up, doing content, and I saw your video that you did earlier this week, kind of putting out your mission statement and your Q&A. I thought it was very, very powerful, and I'm sure a lot of other people did too. So awesome. I think I'm really excited that you're in this space because you have such a unique voice and an interesting perspective on everything. And I feel you were out here doing this and advocating for kids and sharing your story before it was safe to do it. You've been doing this for a very long time, and having you, available on this platform and speaking out, I think is amazing. So.
Oh, thank you so much, Mike. That means a lot. And I'm really excited to talk with you because I don't know, the way you talk about things is very like level-headed and very you're very good at making difficult concepts seem easy, like things that I've struggled with for years. Like somehow you're just like able to explain them in a way that that I just think is so helpful to trying to spread the word. And obviously, I know that and always have known that you're a really nice, kind person, and so I'm excited to do this together.
Awesome. I am too. Yeah, I'm sure there's some people that I work with in the Army that would probably disagree with you, but I appreciate the comment.
Well, I've known you longer than they have.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
When I was a
Yeah,
little.
they don't always get the best version of me, but I don't know that everyone else has too. But yeah, the speaking out. I've This isn't always easy. And I'm sure you probably dealt with this a little bit, like because you were doing CNN, you have your book, which I'll pull up in a minute, even though you're like, no, you don't need to do that, but I'm insisting. You were like going on the road and like being a voice. And if people just do a little bit of searching around on YouTube, they're going to find a tremendous amount of like interviews where you were like on major news networks, sharing your story. What was that like then compared to now, just in terms of like the safety net that I feel exists with this? But then even doing it, I feel like it's activism work. It's rewarding, but sometimes exhausting. How is it then, and how does it feel now for you?
Yeah, so I think then I had to be very like precise about only telling my story, exactly what happened to me, because just Scientology was so litigious and there was just so many horror stories of them ruining people's lives, getting them fired from their jobs. And so I felt like I was like sort of just like muted in that way. I could only talk about things that would happen to me. And then on top of that, it was however the media outlet wanted the story to be. Like it was usually like shoved into some story about Tom Cruise, and a few sound bites that I said were used after, like, spilling my heart out and taking like the only vacation time I'd ever had in my life to talk about this. And then it just winds up being a few sound bites about Tom Cruise. So it could be really frustrating at
Yeah.
times. But yeah, so this is more long form, and we're able to people are able to get to know people and talk about all the nuances of people's stories and go through it several times. And get to know the stories from all sorts of people's different angles. So it's
Right.
awesome.
Yeah, and it must does it feel safer? I'm guessing there's some safety in numbers. Like I
Yeah.
can, the some of these protesters, they're like the one person out in Chicago. They're like, somebody come and be with me. Meanwhile, like when
Yeah,
there's a lot of people there, it's a lot funner, I'm sure.
absolutely. Yeah. And your stories, like my stories being corroborated by many people now,
Mhm.
so when Scientology says, oh, that's not true, it's like, okay, well, can't really keep a lid on this at this point. There's so many people who are telling the same story. So yeah, it's actually it's a really nice feeling.
Absolutely. Did you hear something that I've experienced very much now that I'm kind of reflecting back on everything, but becoming a parent and having my own children did a
Mhm.
lot for me in order to, well, I don't know that it helped me as much as it almost like made me confront my childhood in I never saw myself as the young child that I probably was in certain circumstances, and now that I have children who went
Mm.
through the things that I went through, like before the Sea Org in Scientology and then in the Sea Organization, they're now that same age. It's almost infuriating to me. How does it feel from you as a mother?
I think what you said is like how you were like, "It helped me," but then you're like, "Actually, it kind of was traumatizing," because
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, of course, it's helpful to see it how it is, but is actually, like, kinda traumatizing, I think that there's a point when you're becoming a parent, and in order to be a good parent, you have to be real with yourself if you're doing a good job or not. You don't wanna lie to yourself, and I think that you can't help but compare it to your own experience. And if you aren't going to lie to yourself about how you're doing with them, then you can't really lie to yourself about what happened to you. So it just puts it in a different perspective. So things that maybe I would make excuses for or be like, "Oh, I'm fine." When I think of that happening to my son or my daughter, it is not fine at all. It's disgusting. And yeah, it's actually easier, like, it's just, like, a good way to get rid of the brainwashing, you know? Like, um, just to see my experience through if it were happening to my own kids, and, it's just very clarifying and, eye-opening, for sure.
Yeah. No, totally. And then like my oldest is now because it's like, hey, we're gonna finish dinner. Dad's got to go upstairs and get on the computer and complain about Scientology. Like she's getting to the age where she's 11, so she's starting to ask questions, and I'm trying to kind of feed her information that's age appropriate because she deserves to kind of understand what I'm doing. My younger ones, they don't really care that much yet. They kind of just think it's interesting, and then
Mhm,
I have but for her like trying to have these conversations about kind of what the high control groups are, what some of these high control religions are, because the worst thing for me would be a repeat of what happened to us, like having my children get involved in Scientology for me would be devastating. I would not be able to cope with that at all. So I want to make sure that I'm steeling them against that kind of thing.
totally, yeah. My daughter is also 11. And I had nightmares for years that, like, we were back in, but then somehow I was, like, in and my kids were there, and I was, like, they were separating them, and I was, like, trying to, like, convince them without telling them directly that it was a cult because you can't do that, and it's like, ugh, those are
Right.
the worst. Those are the
Yeah.
worst dreams.
Yeah. They're pretty crazy.
Do you have them too?
I used to, well, I would have dreams every once in a while, and for me, when those things happened, I don't know how I refer to them. Well, I worked with your uncle for a certain amount of time when I was at Int, not with him directly, but kind of as one of his little minions
Mhm,
in Golden Era Productions, and then I had some run-ins with him on my own, just at a certain point where it was kind of traumatic, and he's definitely a person that is very strong-willed, and everyone, it goes on complete pins and needles whenever he's around. So for me, I would sometimes have dreams that I refer to them as Dave dreams, where I'm back in a similar situation where I'm stuck there, but he is kind of a component of it. I'm sure you have a lot of different components, not just probably of him, maybe even of other people, but I think whoever was kind of the strongest control like picture in my mind is who I kind of keep defaulting to in my dreams.
Oh, that makes sense.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Everyone who I've spoken to has these types of dreams, though, just being back in there. And I think that so many parents that I speak to, all they talk like that, all they want is to just not repeat that cycle. It's so
Right.
forefront in their mind, and it's so important to them. And even sometimes I feel like in my case, I went so far to not repeat the cycle that I was just like throwing myself away again, just doing everything I could to be the best possible mom. And so I try to tell people that as well. Like, don't forget that stuff happened to you. And if you're just throwing yourself away, like trying to make sure everyone else is okay, then you're kind of doing it to yourself again. So just make sure you're looking after yourself while you're looking after everyone else.
Absolutely. And I'm going to take a second just to pull up your book, just because I think it is absolutely amazing, and I want everyone to be able to see it. So, for those who are not familiar, Jenna, this is her on the front. This is actually the little Jenna that I remember from when we were kids. I think this was probably down in was that at the ranch or was that down in Pack at?
This was when we went down to Pack for an event. I guess it's like
Okay.
a mini golf course, but yeah. So it was when I
Yeah.
was at the ranch, but yeah.
Yeah, so this is your book. You have both your printed book and then your audio book, Beyond Belief: My Secret Life Inside Scientology and My Harrowing Escape, by Jenna Miscavige, or Jenna Miscavige Hill, which was your married name before you separated from your ex-husband. Anyway, this book is absolutely amazing. The audio book is completely fabulous as well. The lady that did it actually has a similar type of tone to her voice, so it kind of sounds a little bit like you, but it's not yeah, it's not exactly right, but it's pretty close. But I would absolutely recommend that anyone check it out, and here's the audiobook that you can find on Audible. Excellent. And if anyone wanted to know more about what it was like to be a child in Scientology, and specifically in the Sea Organization, this book is excellent. It is, even though it has been in existence for several years, this is probably just as applicable, if not more applicable today than it ever was before. So I cannot recommend it enough. What like before
Thanks.
before I started speaking out, your book, Mark Headley's book, Leah's book, I would listen to these things, and they were like my only source of therapy to kind of like process the different things that had happened. And I was like, I remember these things. I was there when these things happened, but looking through it through somebody else's eyes. I just want to say thank you. I very much enjoyed it. I've listened to it multiple times. So you're like, oh, you don't have to pull out my book. And I'm just like, I absolutely am going to pull it up. So you don't have a choice in that. I'm going to pull it up whether you wanted me to or not.
Well, thank you, Mike. That means a lot coming from you, just because we basically grew up in the same place. Like, so as far back as I can remember, you were kind of there. And so that it was helpful to you. It's like the exactly the type of person that I would hope that it would be helpful to. So thank you.
Awesome. I appreciate that too. Okay, so talking about when we were kids, and because we were cadets, we were at this international ranch. This is when they actually still had cadets in the Sea Organization. We thought we'd talk a little bit about today of the way things were and kind of Scientology's response to that, and probably the main reason why they don't have the cadets today, and kind of what the landscape looks like currently in the Sea Organization, and then also kind of talking about other organizations which are open to similar problems. And I just thought, talking through that, we had talked a little bit about it backstage, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so recently I've had a few people ask me, whether it was protesters or even just in the questions, they've said, like, where are the kids? Like, how can we go save them? And I just wanted to make it clear. Well, first of all, it's wonderful that people are even asking that. But I just wanted to clarify one aspect of it, which is that, like, the place where Mike grew up, where I grew up, where Serge grew up, and Laura and Christy Gordon and many others, is called the Cadet Org. And that is basically where the children of Sea Org members were taken care of, or not taken care of. But and Sea Org members are the senior most members of Scientology, and they basically manage Scientology. So their children were put in the Cadet Org, and that's how we grew up. And so basically kids who were just born up to, I don't know, I guess 18 or older, were in the Cadet Org. And basically when Sea Org members were no longer allowed to have children in, I believe, 1989, there weren't kids born into the Cadet Org. So the rule then was that if you were going to join the Sea Org, you could only have, like, your kid had to be at least 6 years old. So from about 1990 to about 2005, I would say, all those kids have aged out. So there are no longer like a big group of toddlers sitting like in, like, I don't know, on some bus or something like that, that are all together, that all need to be saved. The way we grew up does not exist currently anymore in that form. Most of them are my age, Mike's age, and are adults now. I just want to make that clear so that, because of course, if there was a big group of kids somewhere, then we would be saving them right now, you know? However, even though that Cadet Org doesn't exist anymore, there are many people who grew up in Scientology and not in the Cadet Org who have experienced horrific abuses. Some examples of these people are like Liz Gale. She has a whole book that where she talks about her story growing up, and not in the Cadet Org, but her parents were public Scientologists, and just some of the horrific ways she was treated. Also, like Kelly Copter. She's an example of somebody who did not grow up in the Sea Org, but was still treated horrifically. There's so many other stories out there of this. So the Cadet Org was not the only place by far that these abuses occurred. And so that's why, and the way Liz Gale grew up, that is still like, kids can still grow up in that way in Scientology. So I think it's like her story is so important, because that kind of thing is still going on. And, there are just many other things that are part of Scientology currently that are damaging to children, being forced to confess things of a sexual nature to adults, being forced to hear confessions from adults. This is part of the regular training and processing that is part of Scientology. It's just an inherent part of it. It's inescapable. So these are things that are going to happen in Scientology, regardless of whether or not kids are in the Cadet Org. That's why it's still important to talk about this subject and to raise awareness and to still have changes occur. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that point there. So I hope that
Yes.
makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes complete sense. So really the way that I kind of see this, just to, kind of give my spin on what you were saying,
Mhm.
we as cadets were at some point, this project of little babies being in the Sea organization was a problem for them. So they said, hey, no one can have children anymore. If you do get pregnant, we know that they either force the member, through coercion, to go and terminate the pregnancy, or they send them completely away to one of these organizations in some remote part of the world to go and work there and make next to no money and live very, very badly. So most people decide to terminate the pregnancy.
Right.
So there were no more children then, but there were all these cadets for a certain amount of time. Most of us were absorbed into this organization well
Mhm.
before we received a proper education. There was
Right, and
not a
before
proper
we were
education to be had.
18.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I know that, like, for instance, Sterling and Justin and some other guys that, were kind of my contemporaries, by the time I was 15 and that we're all the same age, they were already working at the international base, had graduated, and now were
Right.
now adults, and they were working there.
That's
So
right, and I was
this
12.
kept, and you were 12. So
Right.
as now as your daughter is basically at the age where she's like, time to join the Sea Org, and you look at that now and you're like, the visceral reaction I get when I think of my daughter doing that is just beyond
Oh
beyond
my god.
explanation.
I know, I remember when she passed the age that I went to the ranch. I was like, "Okay, I haven't sent any of my kids to the ranch or anything
Yeah.
like it yet, so I guess I'm doing okay."
Right. Yeah. Definitely an improvement, right? So then they still had these ranches for a while and these cadet organizations. There was the cadet organization in PAC. It wasn't doing great because everyone was just sort of free range around LA. Then they had the PAC ranch. And then from there, if you like the book that was recently just came out, The Bad Cadet, Catherine
Mhm.
Spolino's story, like that's
Mhm.
another coming of age story on what it looks like for a child to be raised in this organization and then get absorbed into becoming a Sea Org member.
Right.
You're going
Yeah.
to see no part of any of these stories have anything to do with a normal education and opportunities in life. Just they do not, they will not. And then they started. I remember at one point your uncle came out to the ranch and he looked around and there were kids anywhere from the age of probably 8 to 16. He looked around and his comment was, I don't see any children here.
Mm.
And the orders then were like, I want all of them working. So they were all
Mhm.
kind of either sent to Flag, sent to Golden Arrow Productions, to start actually plugging in and becoming um, staff members. So that occurred, and that at
That was
that
in, like,
point, I think.
1999,
Mhm.
and so a lot of those kids were like, my contemporaries were, like, 14, 15 at that time. So they're literally being sent 3,000 miles away from their parents and put directly to work with
Correct.
schooling 1 day a week.
And honestly, how much schooling did that was just a day to like screw around and read books and play
Right.
grab ass as a teenager for a couple hours. You know what I
That's
mean?
so true, yes.
There was not a lot of education. It wasn't like, oh, let's cram in all this really meaningful education. Like, not even a little bit.
Totally, yeah.
Uh, so that happened. So if you think about it, a thing that I have dealt with when I finally left. So I ended up finally staying in the Sea organization, and then I left when I was 27. Though I had a lot of specific skills that I had learned from manufacturing things, working at the International Basin and Golden Arrow Productions, I was able to drive, which was a rarity
Mhm.
in the Sea organization. I I left and I felt like I had imposter syndrome big time with everybody in the normal world. And I felt like I was trying to make up for lost time. I didn't know what to do in a normal setting that everyone else was just used to, just in hanging out with friends, the fact that, you can drink, the fact that you can go into a grocery store and no one's going to stop you from buying a birthday cake at any time of the year. And no one cares. Like no one's checking. Like you can do whatever you want. It was very odd, and I had to figure out a lot all at once, and I'm sure you dealt with that same thing.
Oh, totally. Oh my god, I love what you said about that you can buy a birthday cake any time of year. I just remember because at the ranch, if we would go, like, get food after hours, you get, like, assigned lower conditions.
Oh, yeah.
So
Remember when you're, like in your book, you're, like, hiding food in your drawer and people are, like, yelling at you for it, and you're like, "You can't have my phone," and, like, breaking shit because people are trying to, like, mess with you.
Oh my god. I guess it's
But
all
then
about the snacks for me.
yeah, you gotta, but at the same time, like, none of the control mechanisms that were put in place had anything to do with They were all just control. They were like, we
Right.
have to control you at the basic level. But
They
then when
weren't
we were
saving
the
anybody. They weren't like there was no good reason for them that was helping mankind. It was just like so that you couldn't have it. I can't have, as they would say there.
yeah. So then when we did leave, I felt like it was years of deprogramming, and I plugged myself right into the military, which is kind of just it was the easy button in terms of like I'm going to leave one cult and join another cult, just in terms of high control organization. There
Right.
was some ease to it for me, but I had to learn a lot in a very short amount of time, and I had to make a lot of mistakes. Um, all of our contemporaries that are still there, like when we're talking about the children in Scientology that are you and I that haven't left, and
Right.
there are still a lot of them, they have like, I can almost imagine, because I felt like my maturity and my judgment stopped at a certain point, and then when I left, I had to kind of like fill in the blanks on that. A lot of those people probably do not have the maturity that they should, given the age that they are. They would almost be like a shelter animal. If they left, they wouldn't know what to do in the wild. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. Which seems like it would be a much harder at this age. Like when I left, I was 21 and it was all scary, but I just feel like that would be so much harder for them coming out at this age. Um, yeah. And that's what keeps them in. The
right.
longer you're in there, the more invested you are, and so the scarier it is for you to leave.
Oh, totally. So, Aaron, I think either earlier today or yesterday did a video with a lady. I think I can't remember her name, but her channel is uh,
Shannon,
yeah,
um,
Shannon, and she's on Chicago
Chicago
Scientology.
Financial Audit, yeah.
Okay,
I watched
she
it,
was. So yeah, so she's talking about like, so for those who aren't familiar, Scientology's organizational structure, it consists of, we're Jenna and I are mainly talking about the C organization. This is the highest level echelon, the most dedicated, the people that sign the billion-year contracts. They are the management arm of Scientology, and it is a smaller percentage of people that are in the C organization. Down in major cities, you're going to find regular Scientology organizations. These are referred to as Class 5 organizations. They deliver Scientology services up to the level of Class 5, which is basically, in layman's terms, it means they're state of clear. They're going to make a person that's supposed to be a clear at those organizations, and then they funnel them up to the higher level C organizations to receive services. At these organizations, those are staffed by public Scientologists, or almost like civilian Scientologists, who will sign shorter contracts, like 2.5 to 5 year contracts, and they will work in these organizations. And then they will deliver Scientology services and auditing, which is their kind of counseling that they are selling to people for vast amounts of money. And they get them in the door. And once a person becomes a Scientologist, it is like an assembly line. The more that once you come in the door, they will slowly monopolize and take over your time, where all of your time is then spent in these organizations. So for those people that have children, this was the situation I found myself in before Rosemary brought me to LA and joined the C organization. I was a Class 5 organization public kid, and she was either at the org and I was left home alone by myself, or she would bring me down and I would be put to work as well. And I was given a job in the organization, and I would work like she would. And this is kind of what Aaron did when he was a kid, is he worked in these kind of organizations. So in this video that Chicago Scientology Audit channel was talking about, is above one of their organizations, they have a bunch of immigrant workers that have a bunch of their children there, and it sounds like a lot of them are from Russia. So this is not a new tactic that that Scientology has been using, but it sounds like they're starting to be more prolific in it. I'm probably mispronouncing that. They're doing it more often, in that they're finding these underdeveloped countries or people that are underprivileged. They're recruiting them, bringing them to into these organizations on religious visas, and bringing their families with them and cycling them in to basically be cheap labor. And that looks like it's what's starting to happen. That's happening in Chicago. I guarantee it's happening in other places as well. So though a lot of the protests are going to be locally focused on some of these larger C organization bases in Hollywood, there at the Big Blue building in Clearwater, the stuff like Pearl Snappy is doing down there in Austin, and all of the protesting that's going on, the stuff that's starting in Chicago, and where these other organizations exist in Denver, you can expect there's going to be a population of children that are just brought in as a matter of course because Scientologists are being brought in the door. Along with that, you're going to have kids that are being labor trafficked, similar to what Aaron and his brother were doing and his whole family. This is what they're doing. And I think that as we continue to focus on this, we need to understand that probably the youngest members are going to come from there. And then we also have the Delphi route, similar to what Liz Gale went through. You have these Scientology boarding schools that give a private school education to to Scientologist family members, children, Scientology Children, and then the major recruitment centers for the Sea Organization signing those billion-year contracts are to go to those kids whose parents are big-time contributors or into Scientology
And who
and
have
get
been groomed for
them.
years.
Absolutely. They've been groomed. They're into it. They know the lingo. The thought process is already in place there. And then they very relentlessly try to recruit them for the Sea Organization. So these schools, the private schools that exist, the Scientology organizations, where they're getting new public in the door, the testing centers, things of this nature, these are all things that absolutely should be getting attention in addition to everything that's going on. So you couldn't have enough voices that are contributing to this in their local areas. If there's a Scientology organization there, people need to have eyes on it and figure out what is going on. And that would be time well spent, in my estimation.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I just wanted to add that Scientology didn't cancel the Cadet Org out of the goodness of their heart. Like, there's still an endless well of creativity within them to figure out how to abuse children and how to cheat the system. So, like, for example, when I was in Florida, when I was 15, even though there was no more Cadet Org anymore, there was still a boy who was 9 years old, who was in the same group as me, who was a Sea Org member. Neither of his parents were in the Sea Org. They had like signed him away so that he could. So again, just because there's no Cadet Org, they are still going to be creative with this in one way or another, in ways we haven't even thought of yet.
Yeah, and if you think about it, like that is a very ripe population. You're very impressionable as a kid. I mean, I still have my twins still believe in Santa Claus, and I'm going to let them do it as long as possible. But they would also be easy to get into a cult because, kids have magical thinking that's just kind of built into it. They don't have a basis for discrimination of, right and wrong, true and false. That's what they have to learn as their brains are developing. A lot of the science is now saying like our brains aren't really developed until we're like 25, 26 years old, where we have really the executive function to make decisions and do them well is not until we're in our mid-20s. Meanwhile, it's not safe to have children in Scientology in any way. And, and I know Claire Headley has talked a lot about this with her children. She's like, children should never be in Scientology at any age. Like if you're not old enough to make decisions and, integrate into the normal adult population, which arguably an 18-year-old probably wouldn't even be able to do that, but minimally, like it should almost be illegal to do this. But then we have our First Amendment protections that exist in this country, and we all feel very strongly about those. So it's a very, very complicated problem.
It is.
And yeah, we just have to raise awareness. So, and I saw some comments like there's so much talk that's going on social media about how abusive Scientology is. It stands to get canceled just on social media just because of the amount of outpouring of people sharing their stories.
Right.
Maybe it will, but I can tell you it'd be hard. It would be hard for someone to, I knew if I was going to be like, hey, there's this new thing over here, I'm just going to walk in the door. No, I Google everything. I mean, I'll Google something like, ooh, a different kind of peanut butter at the store than my wife wants me to get. I better Google it. Oh, better not get that. I'm going to get in trouble. Like I do that on simple things. So when it has to do with, hey, am I going to join this cult or not? I probably am going to Google it first and look what you're going to find.
Right.
It's going to be harder for people.
Time.
Totally.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, so it's amazing that all these stories come up, first thing when you Google Scientology. That's what's so cool about YouTube. That's what Aaron always talks about. He wants to see these stories be the first thing that come up whenever someone Googles Scientology.
And I mean, even me, when I Google anything, and it doesn't have to do with, just if I'm looking for, I don't know, a thing that I'm going to buy off of Amazon or a new product, I don't just I actually don't look at the first thing on the list. I usually go down the page a little bit so that I get the real deal. And I think that that's just a normal thing for people at this point. So even if they're paying to get their thing moved to the top, most people are surfing on their phone anyway. Like, you're on the toilet, you got plenty of time. You might as well look at the whole page of Google searches, right?
The toilet and the phone is a guy thing, but yeah.
I walked right into that one. You're not wrong. Yeah, no, but I think, yeah, it's going to be harder for sure. So another thing that's, I think, started to happen is there's all this in the recent months. There's been people that are starting to share our stories and are talking about specific problems they have with other people, and I ran into that with Laura.
Mm-hmm.
I originally, and for those who haven't seen it on my channel, you're welcome to go and look at it. When I started doing stuff and starting to do a little bit on YouTube and kind of poking my head up against, on the other side of the wall, I reached out to Laura because I thought I saw her doing her stuff, and I sent her a message on Messenger, and just like, hey, we were both at the ranch together. In my mind, I did not equate her to somebody that I might have done something offensive to, or did something that I wronged, or she was at all, that she would even remotely consider herself being upset with me. We both came from the same trauma, right? We both trauma bonded. That's how it was. I reached out to her, and the response I got back was, I don't feel like I'm ready to talk to you. And I was like, wait, what? Why wouldn't she want to talk to me? We both came from the ranch. I mean, I don't get it. So a little bit of time passes. She's doing some videos, I'm doing some videos, and I can see on some of her videos that she's really upset at me. And I was like, at first I looked at that, and people get defensive, and I was defensive, and I was like, why is she complaining about me? This is bullshit. That was the original thought that I had. And then I stepped back a little bit. I'm like, well, I haven't talked to her yet. So I reached out to her to talk to her. And I said, can we talk? And she's like, I would like to do a stream with you where we can talk about everything that's wrong. And I'm like, okay, well, can we talk first? And I think that was kind of where we started. So I called her, I heard her out and heard what she had to say. This is just a phone call. And I really realized that she didn't necessarily have all of the details right, but her impression of everything that happened and a lot of the information was 100% right. And I did not want to confront that I had done something wrong. And I was an abuser in someone's mind, because in my mind, I was abused. So I was trying to process that. So we went in and we did our first talk, and we went through and worked through a lot of that. And it was a lot for her. It was a lot for me. And then we did another video after that where we really hashed it out. And I don't recommend necessarily doing that on YouTube for the general population. But it was good for us, and I'm glad that we did it. But me looking at that, I had never in my time since I left saw myself as anything other than a victim. I never did. I am a victim. That's what that I'm, of all these bad things were done to me. I never thought that I could have been the one that was older than somebody else in a position of authority over them, telling them to do things that they didn't want to do. And I was in a situation where I was the perpetrator. And that for me was a big time mental shift. And I'm glad that she and I looked through that. Now, the reason I'm bringing it up is there's a lot of discussion that's going on in different aspects on things on YouTube. There's the little altercation that occurred between Miriam and Mike Rinder. And there's the stuff that's going back and forth. Now, this is very important for people to understand that a lot of things can be true all at the same time. And there isn't, nothing is black and white. Nothing is good and evil. Nothing is just, there's a million different shades of gray on truth on things.
Right.
For Miriam to be kind of dismissed the way that she was, and for the things that happened. And I did a whole video and then this, and I'm not trying to just unearth all this, but I'm just going to mention this as part of our conversation, because the kids have never had, like, everyone that's coming out, kids, adults, or whatever, however we got into it, we've never had a voice where we can say what happened. And now we do. So when that does happen, people need to be, you can't elevate yourself to the point of like, hey, I am not able to stand up to scrutiny because of everything bad that happened to me. We all have to be able to look at that as we sort through it. And the easy button would be to talk it out and to hear it out from one another. If you want to do it publicly, people are going to want to watch it. And what's, I think, good about the public aspect of what Laura and I did do is I think a lot of people got something out of that. A lot of people probably thought we were dysfunctional as fuck, but they're probably not wrong. But at the same time, there was some healing that happened for a lot of people. So my recommendation would be for the people that just want to like, it's okay for someone to have a beef with you. And the best thing that we could do is talk it over. It doesn't mean we all have to be friends at the end of it, but at least means we've tried to do our very best to make sure that that happens. And I want to continue to provide advocacy for both myself and for other people, for those of us who are finally starting to come out and share our stories. It is very important that we all come out, and the more voices that come out and are able to share their truth, the better. And something, if you don't mind me pulling it up, I'm going to bring up Miriam's page. She just actually created her own. Let me see. I'm going to just get this. Okay. So Miriam Francis, most of her work up till now has been through the YouTube page on Children of Scientology, where her and Christy Gordon actually do a lot of advocacy work for other people other than themselves. So Miriam decided to make her own channel where she can create her own space where she can talk about what she wants, which is very important. And she created that within the last day or so. In the last, just so far, it looks like she's up to about 700 subscribers. So it is Rage Against the Dark Arts. Probably a little bit of a Harry Potter theme going on in there. And it's at Against the Dark Arts. All one word if somebody wants to find it. She has her first video that she's uploaded in there. I think Miriam is an extremely brave example of how to advocate for herself. And she's had to do that. But before she was doing that work, she was actually advocating for other people. That's how I met her. Because her and Christy were like, can I sit down with you and help you share your story? You're talking about your mom's stuff, but what about you? Like, can we get your stuff and start talking? And that's how she and I even met and had a chance to start working together, because Miriam and I are about the same, probably age difference as you and I. We would just not have been contemporaries the same way. And she was down in LA. So we started working with it. And I'm like, this person is helping me. But I'm like, she has been through a lot more shit than I have. And I just have immense respect for her. So I wanted to
think that's
your channel.
Yeah, I think it's so amazing that like people like Christy and Miriam who have been through all this stuff. In some ways, like what we went through is so horrible, but like I almost feel like that aspect of it has made them strong enough where, I mean, going through all that and then helping other people, what's more beautiful and amazing than that? Like, I mean, I have spent so much time on the phone with Christy, her like scraping me off the ground, her just being such a wonderful person to me. And so just seeing that they're doing that for other people is just the most beautiful thing in the world to me.
Yeah,
so
I'm really impressed by it.
Yeah, so I'm excited for Miriam. I'm going to subscribe to her after this video.
Yeah, I'm hopefully a few people were. I mean, she started today. When I was at work, I was like, oh, she has a new channel. I looked, it was like 20 something people, and she's up to 700. So I think in very short order, we can get her to the point of being having enough subscribers where she's able to monetize her channel. We can get her the watch hours that she needs to. And she's got an amazing story. And I'm guessing that a lot of her content is not just going to be about her. She's probably going to continue to do things that are going to be very relevant in helping other people. Why? Because that's just the work that this woman does. So absolutely give it a shot. And then one other thing I wanted to mention, just while we're talking about Miriam, this weekend. So Miriam is in the process of trying to pay for some mental health treatments. There are some procedures that are supposed to help with post-traumatic stress in order to kind of help the person get grounded. So she was trying to get this funded, and we are going to I think this weekend there's going to be some people that are doing some advocacy work trying to help raise the money for this. I know that Poe on the Go and Clearwater Chad are going to do a chatathon trying to raise some money for Miriam. If anyone is interested in contributing to her her PayPal, I'm just going to put it up here on the screen. So again, this is to raise money for counseling services and for PTSD treatments. This is PayPal me/Miriam Francis. If anyone is able to give a little bit, I plan on contributing to the chatathon this weekend as they're doing it. Hopefully I'm able to pop on a little bit, and I've already decided that I'm going to pledge $200 towards her treatment. So I'm looking forward to be able to do that on Sunday with everyone else and hopefully add a little bit of steam behind it, because I think the woman's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, exciting. So we have a few, before we get into some starred comments and stuff, Jenna, is there anything else that you were thinking we should kind of talk about before? I'm sure that there's plenty of things in the comments that we'll get into. Do you want to get into those next?
I just have one quick thing that you were talking about that I just wanted to add to. When you were saying that we all sort of have to look inside of ourselves to, maybe see the things that we did when we were there, or we're only looking at it from one perspective. I definitely feel like that's really true, because in the end, we all were in a cult, and I've done things in Scientology that I'm not proud of. And I think about those things all the time. And I think about those things to make sure that I'm checking myself. You know what I mean? I think that that's because I did those things, I feel like it is inside me to do that sort of behavior again. So if I'm not constantly checking myself or questioning myself, then I don't know, then I can see myself doing that again. And that's a little bit what I feel like happened with the Aftermath Foundation. So I just think it's really important that we never think that we are sort of scot-free, like, oh, we're good now. No, if we did those things before, we are capable of doing them again. So, and that's not just directed towards them. It's just something that I hold for myself. That helps me.
No, I think that's really prudent. I mean, if you think about it, like when we came out talking about all that make up for lost time, we had a certain level of stunted emotional maturity that was in place. And we also have a certain way of doing business that was ingrained in us. Like, this is how you're supposed to react when these things happen. And that's why people are like, making comments like, you can't take the Scientology out of it. Like, okay, well, some of that's true. Like, a lot of us have, like, the defense mechanism is what like we were programmed for years to react in these ways. It shouldn't be a shock when sometimes we react to certain things. We feel like we're being targeted. And I know a lot of the members of the Aftermath Foundation, a lot of them were in the same boat that you were, Jenna, as they were speaking out before it was safe to speak out. And I feel like there's this huge safety blanket of everyone doing it now. So it's really hard to, attack hundreds of people that are all kind of behind each other, as opposed to onesie twosies, like the Headleys, the Renders, like all these people, like Annie's, like most of these people were doing stuff when it wasn't safe to do it. So I think that there's a lot of credit that people that were doing the work before it became, a lot easier, deserve. But at the same time, like you said, we all have to be critical of our own thoughts. We have to be able to introspect and say, okay, am I right? Am I wrong about this stuff? And then hopefully, if we can handle it with communication, be able to talk the things out, be able to say, hey, you're right about some stuff, but you're wrong about other things, and then sit there and dialogue it out until it's figured out. But if a person can do that, we're going to be fine. If we can't do that, that's where people like that. This is the thing on social media. Like when people get pissy about something, it's not going to go away. Like in print media, like, cable news and all that sort of stuff, people are over it in 24 hours. Like here, the internet has a long memory, even though the YouTube content that you do is sensational for a minute. But in terms of the things that people consider emotional connections to, those don't go away like easily at all, from what I've noticed.
Totally. Yeah. And it is a strength to be able to apologize. And it doesn't make you look bad. It makes it look like you're a good person and you care. So
yeah, I would agree. Awesome. This has been fun talking. I'm glad we decided to do this.
Yeah, me too.
Should we try to struggle through some comments?
Sounds good to me.
All right, we have some comments and some questions. I've tried to kind of keep up with, I probably missed a whole bunch, and for that, I apologize. I'm going to go up to the start and we'll just kind of work our way down.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Up here at the top for Murphy question, is Jenna willing to join a game night with Aaron, Reese, and Mike? That would actually be fun.
That would be
We need
so
to do
fun.
some, yeah. And maybe we can have Sterling keep score.
Yeah, I've watched, like, I once in a coffee shop and I watched one with you and Sterling and Aaron and Reese, and I felt like FOMO. I was like, oh man, I know all these guys. I should be there. But it was really enjoyable.
But whenever we play bad people, like I'm like playing the military card, like I'm in the military. Meanwhile, Aaron's like, you know, getting kicked off boards, getting arrested. Like, who's gonna win bad people? I wonder what it's gonna be.
Not you,
Yeah.
not you, Mike.
That's funny. Let's see. Unapologetically me 26. Love the book, Jenna. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
See, Donna Lanardo comment. Just watching these children get out of the cans during the Austin event last Saturday broke my heart. I'm guessing they were public kids. Yeah. There's probably a lot of public kids. I don't know. I'm guessing if they're able to, like, for Austin, there's that one kid that I think Aaron refers to him as, he claps a lot. I can't remember the kid's first name. Anyway, most of those are like barely, like they're probably upper teens, early 20s at best. A lot of those staff members, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of them are teenagers.
Yeah, I know when I compare, like, because my son is 15, I'm like, they could easily be 15 or 14 even.
Yeah, it's very possible. Donna again, question, Jenna, do you mind having Mike or anyone say your uncle as opposed to just using his name? Does it bother you now that you've been out for a while?
I mean, when I was in Scientology, he was never called my uncle. He was called COB. So my uncle is just a translation to, like, not have to give this whole explanation. So it's just my uncle. So no, I couldn't care less.
And when we were there, no one said Dave.
Yeah,
Everyone said
right.
COB, and the only time you would hear Dave was at the events when he would be referred to as David Miscavige, and then when he signed all of his numerous directives into the organizations as Love Dave. That's about the only time you'd actually hear Dave. Other
Right.
than that, no, never.
Yeah. I guess Shelly would be like, Dave, this, like when I was with, but yeah, I definitely did not call him Dave. Oh, yeah.
Metrics Tech Solutions, thank you for the super chat. Let's see, Matt's mom. Mike and Jenna, it amazes me how all of you former SPs are so tenacious, intelligent, and articulate. Can you attribute any of those to being in Church of Scientology? What do you think, Jenna?
I mean, I think we had to do I did a lot of reading aloud. I would like M9 everything. So it's like when I would read aloud. And I think I did that so I could work with another person. So I did a lot of practicing at that. And that's mostly all we learned was reading and writing. We didn't learn anything else. Well, besides construction in your case.
Yeah, well, we learned a lot of construction stuff. I think the lifestyle, just going into the military, and I know there's been some other cadets that have actually gone in the military and been successful in the military. Most of them have actually been female, which is odd. If you look at the population, like myself and one other guy, we actually went and kind of followed a military lifestyle, but there's been at least 2 or 3 female cadets that joined the military. And statistically, that actually is way outside of the average of what normally happens. So I think a lot of our programming set us up for that kind of lifestyle being a little easier than probably for most. But I was a shitty reader as a kid. I had dyslexia, and L. Ron Hubbard's study technology didn't do a great amount for me, unfortunately. So,
I can imagine not.
yeah.
That wouldn't have been very helpful.
Vanessa Costales, thank you very much for the super chat. My wife Emily gives me crap when I say thank you very much. It's like Fat Elvis or something. Anyway, all right. Liz Ferris, you're doing amazing. Smash the like and hit subscribe. Thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
All right, Vanessa, admire your strength, Jenna, and you speaking out. I could not agree more.
Oh, thank you. That's sweet.
All right. Two sandwiches tall. That's pretty funny. Question: how is Astra Woodcraft from ex-Scientology kids?
I haven't spoken to her in a while, but I have been thinking about her so much recently. And I recently watched a video with her and her dad and her sister Zoe. And I really need to reach out to her because even just going to LA, sometimes I like drive past her street and I'm like, oh, Astra's there. I just need to send the text and make it happen.
I mean, the more people, even if she doesn't want to, continue to speak out, I mean, I think the reconnection is what kind of feels so good about all this. It's almost like our therapy group, getting in these conversations and being able to say the things, being able to natter and know it can tell us to stop.
Totally. I was such a natter. It was so hard not to natter.
Love it. All right, what is this? Gail DE, Australian channels at the Scientology Watcher and at Perth Scientology Audit and at Aussie or Oz K8. So those are some Australian channels. Let's get on those if people can take a look at those. A lot of times these people are just needing some subscribers to get over the minimum count so that they can live stream. So as these things come up, I know Aaron's talked a lot about that. If we can support that, then we can get these people out there continuing to share the truth. I like it. Okay, Brittany Van Brackle, obsessed with this duo. Mike, brilliant as always. Jenna, so glad you're doing more. You have such a calming demeanor. You're both such a bright light. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's sweet.
Bo Beats, question. It looks like more and more over the years of being a supporter of ex-Scientologists that there are levels of gatekeeping, all of the relevant COS info, e.g. Doug Kramer, second gens, and now Alonzo. Thoughts? I think that there is, humans, we're pack animals. We usually like hierarchies. We get into these things thinking that, we can somehow kind of come together, and that's why things become cliquey. That's just the way human nature is always going to be. So I think that there's always going to be the thing towards a hierarchy. For me, I think we need to try to dismantle the levels of importance based off of what existed in the Sea organization. Like if you were a flag public, you're more important than a class 5 org public, or if you were a Sea Org member, you're more important than any of those things. Or if you came from INT, you're more important than somebody that was at flag. Like all that's bullshit. Like, of course we're going to know one another, be able to, communicate. But a lot of the people that are now starting to work together, we have a lot of different backgrounds. A lot of us were Sea Org kids, but some of us weren't. Like I didn't know Liz Gale before any of this happened, so I think Liz Gale is kind of, just because of her natural leadership abilities, she's kind of filling in a role as kind of a role model. I like that because she was on the Aftermath show, which I think that might be a tiered thing too. So I don't know. I think we should all just be real with each other and try to minimize the fake bullshit levels of importance and just try to help each other share our stories. What do you think?
Yeah, there's no reason it needs to be hierarchical. And people from different backgrounds, I find their stories so interesting. Like the ones that are, oh, well, now this sounds rude to you. I'm like the ones that are the same as mine. Whatever. No, but like it's so interesting to hear just like a totally different thing. Like I remember when Aaron had that Cyril Shakay on, I was just like, his story was just so different from mine. It was just so interesting that and equally important. There's no reason why one person is more important than another.
Totally agree. Love it. All right, Arnie Van Halen, love you both. Thank you very much. Lathanda Grocklinga, a proud fleaboard warrior. Thank you for the super chat here. Thank you for your wonderful book, Jenna. 100%. Anyone who hasn't seen it, they need to. I am a never end, but it helped me understand parts of your own trauma from a high control group from Germany. Yeah, Lathanda is, she's great. She's she's a lot of the comments that I did a recent thing about some of the German news crew stuff, and Lathanda had some very interesting feedback. So
Oh,
get out
so
right over there. Yeah. All right,
cool.
Tanya. Comment, just wanted to say thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your stories with us. Sending much love to you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Trailblazer Laura. Children do not belong in any cult. Thank you for shining a light on this issue. Thank you. Whoa. I just zoomed in. Let me zoom out. I'm trying to completely make it so that I can't even see my own screen. Okay, finally found it. Woohoo! Okay, cool. Hit the wrong button. It goes nuts. All right, Janet G. Jenna, all of the power to you. Mike, as always, I love your voice in this movement. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. Elena Rainerman, how is it that you two can speak with such clarity and not have any education? Well, we had some education, but it wasn't a formal education. I know a lot of if I'm trying to take the bright side out of what we went through, we did, like Jenna, we were forced to read a lot. And we were made to be very tenacious and determined and hard-headed in terms of making things happen. And I think in that way, we've been forcing ourselves to try to exist despite all of that. And one thing I learned is what people will do to people, which I learned a lot about that. And I think that is probably, it was a lot of hard truths that we probably learned that a lot of people maybe never learn, or if they learn, maybe learn it later in life than we probably should have. But yeah, our education was definitely substandard, but there was weird parts to it that were probably I'm able to take something out of, is hopefully a positive angle to it.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we were always living in such close quarters with other people. Like, so we were like extremely social. All day, every day, never had a moment to ourselves. So I guess you do learn a lot about what people will do to other people in that type of situation.
Yeah, that's true. All right. The Big Dog, thank you for the super sticker. And here I go, hiding everything again. I'm obviously hitting the wrong button somehow. Aaron's probably laughing at me in the background. All right. Let's see. Debbie Green, thank you. Let's see. Jack, another super sticker. Thank you, Jack. And then we have a super chat. You two are great. Hi from NYC.
Hi.
Arda A. Hi, Arda. Awesome. We got to the end of the chats. I know there might be some other stuff in the live, but I know that I think we're probably getting up. We're just a little bit past an hour. I really enjoyed this chat, Jenna.
Yeah, me too. I hope we can do more in the future.
Yeah, I do too. I think we should. And then, as you know, we'll probably keep incorporating in other people. I think being able to advocate for each other, come together, share some of these stories, hopefully keep each other, provide context that's very realistic for people to understand. I mean, that's what I want to do. So let's do it.
Awesome. Thank you,
Cool.
Mike.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm not going to end with my goofy Tom Cruise thing that I normally do. I just want to keep our chat just to our thing. I really enjoyed this. And hey, I'll see you next time. How about that?
Okay, sounds perfect.
All right. Bye, Jenna. I'll see you later.
Bye.